a country of tea rituals, wooden shrines, bullet trains, anime skylines, and memories of fire. Japan can feel timeless and futuristic at once, as if several centuries are somehow living in the same moment. But that balance was never peaceful or inevitable. It was forged through earthquakes, civil wars, foreign pressure, empire, defeat, and one of history's most astonishing reinventions. Japan begins with water. 4 main islands, mountain walls, narrow plains, violent seas, and constant tremors made life difficult, but also protective. Early communities fished, farmed, and adapted to a landscape that never let them forget nature's power. That geography did more than shape survival. It created a civilization close enough to Asia to learn from it, yet distant enough to choose how much to accept. From Korea and China came rice cultivation, metalworking, writing, Buddhism, and models of state power. Japan did not simply copy them. Its rulers imported ideas, then reshaped them around local clans, court ritual, and native belief. In places like Nara, the country began building a more centralized order. Yet from the start, Japan's identity grew from a paradox. It became itself by absorbing what was foreign. In Heian-kyo, now Kyoto, politics could be as delicate as perfume and as ruthless as war. Aristocrats competed through marriage, poetry, and ritual, while emperors often ruled through layers of court influence. This world produced extraordinary art, from refined calligraphy to what many consider the world's first psychological novel. But behind the beauty, power was drifting away from the capital and toward armed provincial families. Central authority weakened. Military houses gained land, followers, and legitimacy. The Genpei War helped decide which warrior clan would dominate the realm, and with that came a new political formula. Japan would still have an emperor, but real power could sit elsewhere. The shogunate was born from this split arrangement, and it solved one problem while creating another. Who truly governed Japan, the throne or the sword? The samurai age was not one era, but several, and it was far messier than legend suggests. There were codes of loyalty and ideals of honor, but also betrayals, tax struggles, peasant uprisings, and regional warlords fighting for survival. During the long age of civil war, castles multiplied, villages fortified, and whole provinces became military laboratories. Out of chaos, Japan was being violently unified. By the early 17th century, Tokugawa rule imposed a new order from Edo, the city that would become Tokyo. Daimyo were controlled, social ranks hardened, and major warfare largely disappeared. Roads improved, cities grew, merchants prospered, and a vibrant urban culture flourished in theaters, print shops, and pleasure districts. Yet this peace rested on strict control. Japan had gained stability by narrowing movement, hierarchy, and contact with the outside world. In the 19th century, Western gunboats forced a reckoning. The Tokugawa system, built for internal balance, looked dangerously exposed in an age of industrial empires. Many Japanese leaders saw the same fate that had overtaken parts of Asia: unequal treaties, foreign pressure, and humiliation. The old order lost legitimacy fast. Suddenly, preserving Japan no longer meant resisting change. It meant changing before outsiders imposed it. The Meiji Restoration did not restore an ancient past so much as invent a new national future. Power was re-centralized around the emperor. Domains were dismantled, the military and schools were rebuilt, and industry accelerated. Railways, factories, and modern ministries spread with astonishing speed. But modernization also sharpened ambition. Japan was no longer just trying to avoid domination. It was beginning to pursue power of its own. In the early 20th century, Japan emerged as a major power, defeating rivals and expanding across Asia. To many at home, this looked like proof that modernization had succeeded. But empire carried brutal consequences for millions beyond Japan's shores, and militarism tightened its grip on politics. Expansion promised security and prestige. Instead, it locked the country into a path of escalating war that would end in ruin. By 1945, Japanese cities were burning. Firebombing devastated urban neighborhoods. Okinawa became a nightmare of civilian suffering, and Hiroshima and Nagasaki introduced a new terror to human history. Defeat was total. The empire collapsed, the military order was dismantled, and the country faced a question deeper than reconstruction. After such destruction, what could Japan become without the myths that had led it there? Post-war Japan rebuilt under occupation reforms, a new constitution, and a security relationship that reshaped its place in the world. Then came the economic miracle. Factories, shipyards, electronics, and automobiles turned the country into a symbol of disciplined modernity. Tokyo rose in concrete and neon. The Shinkansen made speed itself part of national identity. Yet prosperity did not erase memory. It existed beside it. Today, Japan is often imagined through extremes. Ancient temples and robot hotels, Zen gardens and gaming districts, aging villages and hyper-dense cities. But its deeper identity lies in the way it layers time. Shrines survive beside rail hubs. Seasonal rituals endure inside a technological superpower. The same country that absorbed outside influence again and again kept translating it into something recognizably its own. That may be Japan's oldest talent. Japan's history is not the story of a culture frozen in tradition. It is the story of a society that survived by editing the world again and again until foreign influences, local memory, and hard-earned caution fused into something singular. That is why Japan can feel so familiar and so strange at once. It is not a relic of the past. It is a masterwork of reinvention.